Hi, I'm Josie, and I'm basically a news person.
Hi, I'm Alex, and I'm basically a wrestler.
Well, hello, YouTube. It has been a while. Not gonna lie, we didn't do an episode last week because we were a little bit depressed. How are you doing?
Not me.
Really?
I was too busy having a cool time. No, I was depressed. I was too busy crying.
Yeah, it was really, well, I've heard it described as the feeling that we are feeling. There was a New York Times article about languishing, and I've never identified harder with anything except that meme of that guy coming out of that hole, so I'll put that here. But also, languishing. It's the idea that you're kind of like, you know, languishing.
I gotta say, we are languishing in lockdown. It's our youth and beauty is being wasted.
We're languishing, like this introduction is languishing. So basically, it's been a while, mostly because I couldn't bring myself to read or process anything that was going on, because we've been experiencing what has been described as COVID whiplash.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's calling it COVID whiplash?
Me.
Oh, okay.
I'm calling it that.
And why are you calling it COVID
All right,
whiplash?
here's the thing. I just want everybody to acknowledge that I have a clipboard and a matching pen because I am a business person or whatever. And I just think it's really important that at this time we acknowledge the difficulty in emotionally processing going from kind of like, yeah, we're gonna get to zero to now being like, we're gonna just let people die. So here's what I wanna do. I have been feeling so overwhelmed and so whiplashy, which I guess I mean like emotionally thrust between, you know, rooting for one thing and now having to like mentally adjust to this idea that we ain't going for zero anymore and we want to just like live with COVID and we're just totally chill with, like, I love COVID, I love it, I'm like polyamorous as fuck, I love it, it's great. Like, I love it, it's fine, like, I love it so much. So because I've been feeling so depressed, I was trying to process a way to like figure out how to deal with the change in information and like the change in how we're supposed to be.
Besides drinking and trying to kill each other.
I've been doing that anyway, but I mean on top of that I've been looking at ways to like kind of figure out how to deal with the shift from going for zero and like just being like, yeah, we like doing this like
We're on an island, we're gonna just get rid of the virus.
Suppress the shit out of it and like, you know, we'll live a totally normal thing. And now being like, you know what, Delta is a real threat and we have to just live on with that virus. So
it's too hard and we're just gonna relax about it.
What I decided to do was spend the last 48 hours. I mean, yes, I should have been doing my homework, but I didn't. I instead made a giant document of how Australia fucked up and we got to.
Did you do this instead of doing your homework?
I did both, honestly.
Like,
I
hope you appreciate, no sacrifice needed. Okay, so.
Yeah, I did both.
Right.
So what I did is I put together a timeline, cobbling together our hotel quarantine failure, our Gladys Berejiklian failure, our federal government failures, like, so that we've just got like a big old
failure
timeline.
Soup.
Yeah, big old failure soup. And what I want to come to is just kind of like, you know how we're all feeling this sort of like, ooh. There's a reason. In the last 18 months, it's been a lot. And I know we all know it's been a lot, but here is like, you know, evidence and like, you know, in one timeline that it's been fucked.
And on this is why you're depressed.
Yes, this is why you're depressed. But also I would say that this timeline wasn't easy to find. There is a Wikipedia, like all the sources are below, but like there's a Wikipedia timeline and like that was helpful, but it didn't really have everything. Like it kind of missed a bunch of stuff. So, you know, here's a timeline on why and how Australia like fucked itself. And I guess my caveat is that obviously if we had done what we should have done, which is like, I don't know, make a deal with Pfizer in like June of 2020, we could have heavily suppressed, vaccinated our entire population and been opening by this point without heaps of deaths and like hospitalizations and crashing our healthcare system.
Oh, you mean the thing that the Doherty report actually said was meant to happen?
Well, it's
rather than
ideal.
The concentrated fuckery that's due to happen instead. Okay,
yes.
cool.
And now we've got this sort of like health crisis looming. This is why like the shift mentally is a lot to process because 1 in 3 people who get sick with COVID develop a chronic illness that goes for more than 6 months. And according to studies that have come out of the US in just the last week, of each 100 people infected, 2.13 people will die. And unvaccinated people are 11 times more likely to die of COVID-19. So can you, like, I am so curious to know, when do you think we had our first case in Australia?
March.
It was
of 2020.
January 19, 2020. So we just cast our mind back. What were you doing January 2020? Like,
I think I was like, oh my God, we're on fire.
Yes. So that's something to remember. That in, the summer of 2020, it was the fires.
Yeah, we came back from Queensland and everything was on fire. We like drove through the smoke. It was like descending into Mordor.
I'll put pictures here of our bike ride where we go normally every day, and it was like completely covered in smoke.
It was like Silent Hill coming.
I also think we shouldn't forget that Scott Morrison left. Then he just
dog.
left, and we're like, oh, I love
dog.
that guy. Like, so that I don't want to spook everybody and foreshadow anything, but that's going to be a pattern. For the rest of the episode, he does.
Our glorious leader
does,
cast letting us down.
He does
don't
leave.
say.
So January 30, the World Health Organization actually declares that it's a public health emergency. They're kind of like, I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but it's kind of an emergency.
Just let you know, this is going to be a big deal coming down the line. They all laughed at us, didn't they?
Oh my god, I remember back then, like January 30, we were just like, this is kind of like a big thing. Thank you, Reddit, for keeping me informed.
I was asking people at my wrestling school, do you think this is going to be a problem? And they were all like, nah.
Nothing's ever a problem, and therefore never will.
18 months of 90% closure later, it can't turn out to be a big deal. Bigger hit than everyone thought.
Huge deal.
Huge deal. So
I think that's also kind of back at the time when we started paying attention to things like the World Health Organization, because honestly, hadn't been listening up until that point, honestly. Pandemic, don't know. What's the difference? Honestly, haven't done science since year 10, so I don't know. By March 10, 2020, we actually had 100 cases in Australia. Does that feel? Then on March 11, the WHO finally gets it together and calls it a pandemic. And I think everyone's just like, ooh, good. That's like kind of a big deal. I think by that point we were already like not going outside.
oh yeah. We were like hiding under a doormat with a hole cut out for our heads.
Yep. So we were early adopters, but also I'd come back from AIDC and there was a confirmed case there, and we also were extremely sick. So that's where like we kind of like early adopters, like, hey, you haven't even heard of COVID yet,
and we're already dying from it.
You're already dying. I died of COVID.
Head of the curve. That's how cool we are.
Yeah. March 19 was actually the Ruby Cruise debacle, where they actually... Do you remember they let 2,700 people disembark? Turns out that ship had a COVID outbreak, and they let those people just go home to other states. Guess how many people actually ended up having COVID from that?
10.
900. And guess how many people died?
10.
28.
Jesus.
So that actually ended up becoming responsible for 10% of all cases at that time. On the 20th of March, we actually finally, Scott Morrison, closed our borders to everybody but our citizens and residents. And that felt very heavy-handed at the time. I remember the sentiment being like, what are you, crazy?
It was like, our government's closed the borders to white people.
Yeah, it's wild. And so on the 31st of March, we actually got JobKeeper. And I think that was like, for a lot of us old socialists, it's like when like, oh my god, you could have given us all that money the whole time.
Remember when we thought society was changing?
Yeah.
Like, this is a new age. Universal basic income's next.
Yeah.
The nightmare is over.
They just took it away. They just took it away.
18 months of taking tax dollars and handing them to millionaires later.
Almost overnight they were able to wrangle enough money to give everybody almost a livable wage was kind of like, oh.
Turns out they could have done it.
You could have done it the whole time. Excellent. By April 2nd, Victoria had over 1,000 cases a day. So that kicked off major. May 2nd, we had the old Cedar meats outbreak, and we realized that like meats and things called clusters were fucking gross, and I feel like that's when people kind of started taking it a little more seriously. Like it started sounding gross.
I wouldn't want to have any part of a meat cluster.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Like a cold sore cluster.
It does.
Like, it doesn't sound good.
It sounds like a collection of sores. That's
yeah,
a cluster.
Like truly disgusting. Around mid-May, New South Wales starts easing its restrictions. May 12th, Melbourne also starts easing its restrictions. So I guess we're just kind of like, you know what? Basically, nailed it.
We're going to be fine. It's all gone away.
I think this is part of what I hadn't found overlaid in most of the timelines, that I felt like there was a lot of timelines that were just like Melbourne lockdown timeline or like, Victorian government timeline, but I've kind of compiled them. So one thing I think is really interesting is to watch like the vaccine hesitancy issues arise. So in late May, the Novavax trials began in Melbourne. And I think that's important because the press started reporting on vaccine trials and every single thing that went wrong with them, which I think did contribute to people being like, vaccines, that's not proper.
They're a bit of a fragile thing to begin with in terms of perceptions. So.
Totally. So from May 31st to 21st of June, Melbourne continues to relax its restrictions. And this is also now what we know is that's exactly the same time when Greg Hunt like got a call from Pfizer and was like, I'm just gonna get like my secretary to get it. It's probably not his secretary, it's probably like someone else who was like majorly important, but he didn't take those calls.
It's a flunky.
And they were just like, whatever, like we're just gonna give our money to our AstraZeneca friends. So.
What sort of evil capitalist government do we have when they don't return the calls for massively powerful pharmaceutical companies? Like, I don't understand. Are you guys sucking off big business or not?
No, not
because
the traditional
it's
way.
We don't care about pharmaceuticals. We only care about mining magnates and media moguls.
No, no. Here's the subnote on that. They only specifically care about their friends that can like farm.
Oh, okay. They didn't have a mate at Pfizer.
What's that called? You said that there's a word for that when they give their friends money.
Cronyism.
Is it okay?
Yeah, cronyism. We'll call it cronyism.
I thought there was another word where it's like they give their money. It's called like from bubbling or something.
It's called corruption.
Yeah. So
All right, so because Pfizer didn't have a mate in Parliament or vice versa,
I don't know, yeah.
They were like, look, come back to us when you own a TV station, dipshit.
Yeah, don't even call me. That's what Greg Hunt literally said. He was like, whatever, man. He was like over and So that's what happened. And that was like over, that's more than a year ago at this point.
It is now.
Where we're like, I wish we really had a bunch of Pfizer. By late June of 2020, Melbourne is trying to lock down by postcode. So we were kind of like the first place to be like, let's just like lock out poor people and see how that goes.
No, just lock down Dandenong and see what happens.
It didn't work. And
turns out people move around.
Yeah.
Who knew? All right, so in early July 2020, Daniel Andrews asks for the judicial inquiry into why quarantine is shit. Hotel quarantine specifically. And then by July 9th, our second major lockdown starts and goes all the way to October.
By 20th of October 2020, it was all over. We totally nailed it. We like smashed it and was like totally fine. Does anyone else remember that? Like that was not that long. That was less than a year ago. And we were like,
Freedom Day 1.0.
Yeah, we killed it.
The sun came up and everything sort of unfolded and we were like, yay, we did it.
So basically from, like October through November to early Feb 2021, we fucking spent time just fucking around.
Halcyon days.
We didn't get hotel quarantine sorted. We didn't fucking make deals with any of the vaccine suppliers. Interestingly, in December, we had the vaccine developed in Queensland. I don't know if you remember this, but it was showing up false positives to HIV. And so they scrapped it. And that was publicized around December, which I think really did contribute to vaccine hesitancy.
Really rocked the embracing of vaccines.
Maybe a little. Like I think there was that sentiment already there, and I kind of think it contributed to that. And then actually on December 18th, we had that Northern Beaches outbreak in old New South Wales. So I don't know if you remember any of that, but we were having our good old time down here and they were like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have New Year's Eve. Like that was a whole thing. By January 7th, Scott Morrison is on the telly talking about targeting 80,000 doses of vaccine rolled out by March 1st. Then he updates that to be like, actually maybe like 4 million by March.
I'll restrict the premise for that question. I gave a different date.
By January 25th, he's like maybe actually 4 million doses by early April. So he's kind of like, I think
push them goalposts.
People who are hearing the news sporadically, which is what I like, there's the 2,000 of me and my best closties, like who are like watching the YouTube channel every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? Like we're watching that every day.
The daily briefings.
The rest of the people are not, and they're just, I don't know, they're catching it through the news or whatever. Like they're just like, it's like too much. So that's, okay, 2,000 minus how many people live in Victoria is this many people? Like that's a lot of people who are not watching those press conferences every day. So I feel like, those moving targets felt very, I don't know, out of touch, out of reach, like not clear. And don't forget, at that point, fucking no one was eligible. It was like, are you over 85 and only have toenails that are like 55 centimeters long?
If you storm the beaches of Normandy, you are eligible for a vaccine.
Okay, that's not me, so I guess I'll just wait. January 31st, Greg Hunt, who we love, says the whole country will be vaccinated by the end of October 2021, which, I mean, we're not there yet.
He's got a month and a half. I mean, they have turned it around, yeah.
We did have a mini lockdown from the 13th to the 17th of February, reminding us all that like, oh, is this still a thing? Yeah. Like, oh. At that point, we had less than 1% vaccination, while the US had a full total 7% double dose.
Shaming us.
So we were just like, it's not like literally a thing. AstraZeneca was actually only approved on February 15th. That's not that long ago. That's basically Valentine's Day, my friend. When is that?
How romantic.
How romantic. On February 21st, we had the first public vaccination, which was like a frail old woman from the heart of the sea getting her like, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure Scott Morrison pinned her down with his giant ape cunt hands and forcibly vaccinated her.
Yeah.
And then made her shake his hand afterwards.
And that's how we all knew we wanted to get vaccinated. So that was like a very strong showing. So they had previously made those goals of like, you know, like 80k a day, etc. And like 4 million by March 31st. By March 1st, we had done 30k doses.
That is a lot less.
That is quite a bit less.
They wanted.
Can't do the math.
I know you do the math.
Can't do it. Here it
Those
is.
numbers spell disaster for the COVID vaccination program.
On March 11, Health Secretary Brendan Murphy admits that they don't actually know if they could do 2 shots for everyone by October of 2021. This is part of that sort of movement where they're like, goalposts, we move them. If you don't like them, just move them. Goalposts.
If you promise to do something and it's too hard,
move 'em.
change the promise.
April 8th, I think, is a huge shift.
4 days before my birthday. Big deal.
True. What age did you turn? 49.
32.
Me too, baby. Me too.
Forever.
April 8th, the news comes out from Mataji, which we'd never heard of before. It sounds like Nintendo. That it's not great, and we're not going to let people who are under 50 take AstraZeneca anymore.
Because it could melt them.
Yeah, melt or like give them slight strokes or whatever. Like the
Bit of a
press
bellyache.
did run with it, and it was quite aggressive. So it did
Turns out, sold a few newspapers, generated a few clicks.
quite a bit of clicks.
Vaccines will melt your face.
Yeah.
Watch
so
that just kick off on the internet.
that really clicked out. And also April of 2021, the Financial Review published the glorious publication about Gladys being the woman who saved the nation. So put that
Fuck.
here.
Oh, yes, this was her piece in Time.
I think we should also
Give it a
reiterate
count.
that at that whole
Piece
time,
for our time.
she had been shitting on Daniel Andrews, being like,
Look at him, fuck it up. You never see us shit the bed like that. We'll never have that many cases.
We
Look
would
at that, yeah.
never do a lockdown. So then Victoria had another lockdown from the 28th of May to the 10th of June. Do you remember that?
Good
I don't
times.
really. That would be, I guess,
remember we were meant to have a
number
wrestling
4.
show and then we didn't have a wrestling show.
Yeah, I think that's probably when we this year started being like, oh, we were living in
Are we fucked
relative
this year too?
freedom.
Yeah.
Yes. May 28th, we reached 3.9 million vaccine doses. On that day, we missed all the previous projections. So previous to that, from February onwards, various ministers and the Prime Minister had been making all sorts of like, yeah, definitely 4 million
totally
by
get this
March.
done.
We didn't do that. The next day, June 11, is like an extremely pivotal day. So that's the day where Melbourne starts coming out of the 4th lockdown. On the same day, the limo driver spent his first full day of infectious
The Sydney limo driver. So this is the guy who picked people up from the airport and dropped them off at hotel quarantine.
Yes, he hadn't been vaccinated, and he got infected by most likely the airplane staff. They didn't,
And he didn't wear a
until
mask.
about 3 weeks or two to 3 weeks later, make it mandatory for the people who ferry the people back and forth to also be vaccinated. June 18th, 2020, New South Wales by Gladys. Look, we don't like her. Fine. She told people on June 18th to go about their business. They did mandate masks on public transport.
Well, this is when she came out and was all like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
It's not a lockdown. That only happens in Victoria.
You'll never see us doing that Melbourne nonsense.
It was like 9 cases. So they were like, you know what? I just want to reiterate, at that point, June 18th, a full week after that man had been infectious in the community, she was like, we would never do a lockdown. Absolutely not.
It's the ultimate extension of our sports team is better than your sports team. I've always loved a bit of State of Origin. I haven't actually.
What's that? I don't know what that is. But I do know what it's like having sibling rivalry, and I know that I would never want to go back on what I'd said. So I get it, but I'm not in charge, and that's a good thing. So
yeah, but it's like if your whole gimmick is claiming something that's purely based on luck rather than strategy.
I think we should insert her being smug on like Kyle and whatever, where she's like, I would never.
What happens in Victoria where it just gets away from them?
I keep saying to people, it's not for me to comment on what other governments do.
Yeah, but off the record, what do you think?
I've just we've got the confidence that our system's in place, our public's used to doing things a particular way, and it's a question of trust. And it's much easier to lock down because you don't have to worry about anything. It's much more difficult to let people move around when the virus is circulating, and that's been a challenge for us. But
That that pivotal day on June 11 kind of, extends out. They sort of start having like some cases they will not define what is essential. They're like, Bunnings definitely, and like, Peter Alexander for sure. Like, you guys can all define what's necessary. I did enjoy, being someone in, which is pajamas.
I know what Peter,
do
that's what it was. It was, these are the essential businesses. Transport, energy, Jimmy Jams.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So on June 23rd, she did make masks and some restrictions for hospitality, but she wouldn't
How
define
much must
it.
that have stuck in her craw?
Oh.
Like, if your whole gimmick was laughing
her face
at
in. Like, her face says it all. Like, she did not want to have to do that. It was like having, I do not like losing at, like, Monopoly. But, if...
This is like the last time you and I played competitive video games. Every time we play video games, we've got to be on the same side. Otherwise,
not healthy for
otherwise it's very unpleasant
It's
and not
very
good for the
unpleasant.
relationship. The last time we played a competitive game... The last time we played a competitive game was Age of Empires 3, and Josie had utterly crushed me, but I had one elephant left.
Look,
and I did
not like the way that you were playing.
But it was just, no, you were right, because instead of me graciously conceding defeat, I held out in a shitty way by running my elephant around the map, building bases. And basically, I had, for all intents and purposes, lost. But my pride and desire to troll you, my hubris was, my Dr. Hubris was so monumental that I couldn't let that happen. And instead, I just prolonged it and generated great suffering in our relationship.
I was so angry.
By refusing to die. And as a result,
bullshit. How many years
ruined, this is like 9 years, 10 years, and it's ruined our capacity to play competitive games. And that's what kind of happened here. If your whole gimmick was, we'll never lock down, not like those chumps across the border, no one rocks like Springfield. And as a result, the death and suffering that was generated because she was too proud to admit that she was also subject to the same laws of biology that everyone else was.
So let's get back to the fucking graph, because the graph
timeline
will tell
of
us what
Conjuring.
is up.
Right.
Okay, so I'm sorry, but I'm getting very sweaty and very upset.
Passionate!
I'm very passionate. 15 days after the first fucking transmission, Gladys Berejiklian, it was just like...
Give me a date. When did this happen? What are we talking
June
about? June 25th. June 25th, 2021.
What is that, like fucking 3 months ago? Like, that's how long ago?
100 years ago.
Right? It feels like 100 years. 100 years. She finally was just like, you know what, we're gonna try and lock down the poor people. So don't forget that she tried to lock down the LGAs first. She tried to lock, after it had already like come from like rich people land, because those are people who were still allowed to travel. She tried to lock down the LGAs.
Those Bondi
June
slags.
26th, so June 25th, she puts down the LGAs, and then 26th of June, she actually goes into 2-week lockdown with 82 cases, right? By July 2nd, the federal government finally realizes that it might be difficult to make money with COVID, and they start to put into place this national plan. So that's the July 2nd, which again, what is it? Like, it's like September whatever. Like, it's not September 12th or something.
September 11.
Is it? Right?
Yeah.
Is it September? Oh my God.
More or less.
Pray to the bill, like, yes. July 2nd, the federal government starts to like talk about publicly this like national plan for Australia's COVID response. That's when we start to like, this is the first sort of time where we start to get this transitional rhetoric where we're like,
Oh, this is where they move from let's make it so there's no COVID.
could we do the best to like,
Hey,
let's
COVID,
kill some people. Let's kill some people.
Maybe it's
some
not
people
that-
are gonna die.
So this is the initial...
This is the difference from deaths to succumb.
So yeah, this is the reframing of we absolutely want no COVID to COVID maybe not such a big deal.
I love the let it rip, like it's such a Jack the Ripper, like let it
We're
rip.
not pulling off a band-aid.
Ooh.
We're creating an environment in which children and the elderly are in tremendous danger and people in the middle aren't so safe.
Yes, that's the thing. I hate this
Yeah.
idea that it's like, let it rip, like, ever. Like, no. It kills people indiscriminately.
No, the real dividing line in terms of who gets fucked up from COVID isn't between the old and the young. It is between the rich and the poor. And I think that has dictated so much of this policy shift is now they've realised, okay,
we've
if you're
got
rich enough to throw a billion things, like Joe Rogan got COVID, and it turns out if you're incredibly rich,
You can
it's
throw
not
enough.
so huge a deal.
Yeah, because you're going to get the treatment and the care.
Yeah. But if you're poor, you are fucked,
You're
much
fucked.
like anything else. Yeah.
Yes.
Pandemic
So
of the poor.
I would say riot in the streets and like eat.
But wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
At that point, Victoria does go back lockdown number 5. We also did it, we did a video, you can watch it here. That was July 16th due to 27th. 2nd of August, it's September. Let's just remember that. This is September now. 2nd of August, the Doherty report comes out where they're like, you know what? If you just get casually to 70%, start opening up, millions of people will die. I
love the way 70 to 80% vaccinated very quickly became 70.
Oh yes. Lest we not forget that 70% is 56% of the adult actual full population. It's it's just not that many people. It's really. So let me just
lay it on you.
So I just want to remind everybody that till this point, people under 40 were not eligible for the vaccine. So you're hearing all the above, the whole 100 minutes above.
What we like to recommend is get out and get the vaccine that you can't get.
Yeah, and all you're hearing is that you can't get it, you're not actually eligible, and it might kill you. I would point out that you do want your latest governing bodies to tell you exactly the information that's coming out, and of course you want to be told the best governance or health advice. I think we could do a whole episode about just when the government says we are following the health advice, because there's been some excellent critical analysis of what exactly that means. What's been interesting is that they have just been unequivocally saying that we are following the health advice, and the idea that you just follow literally health advice, health is an entire let me finish. That health is an entirely separate discipline, and that you wouldn't consider all the other important disciplines that impact people's lives, that you're just blindly following the health advice is something.
Hey baby, I'm just following the health advice.
Ooh, yeah. So there's been really interesting discussion about that, but let's get back to the timeline. So August 30, finally, after that whole time, August 30, 2021, which is this many days ago, people under 40 become eligible for the vaccine. August 31st, Gladys makes a press conference where she says for the first time that 0 is not possible. They had 1,168 cases on that day. Do you remember that news?
It's she looked at all the poo in her pants and said, no poo pants is unattainable. I've changed my pants 3 times and poo keeps coming out of my butt. So look, I have come to the conclusion that because I can't stop shitting in my pants as a broader concept is unattainable.
It's over now.
Unattainable. Look, it's just, I think, not having poo in our pants was an unreasonable fantasy, and we need to be realistic, and in the realistic position to take is that there will be poo in your pants. We're gonna shit our pants.
I'll put the date here that Daniel Andrews also conceded the same point, but it's
he looked like a man who had regretfully shed his pants.
It was within
in that moment.
And I'm someone who's pooed my pants on a train, and oh my god, I can tell you the regret is high.
You didn't tell me this.
Oh.
What the fuck?
Well, look. The point is...
Jesus. All right.
You just leave. The rest of the episode is just me by myself.
I'm out of here, you and your shit-filled pants.
Nah, sit down, cunt. You don't give a fuck.
I'm going nowhere.
Listen to me. So, the point is that within that same week span, Daniel Andrews comes to the same realization. Obviously, the data in Victoria suggests that Delta is a formidable opponent?
Thinking about it,
formidable opponent.
And I've realised that we are irrevocably fucked.
Yeah.
Just absolutely.
And I just want to be the reason that we feel Whiplash is because that was less than a month ago. By the 9th of September, Gladys releases a plan to create a totally new fuck situation for people who have been doubly vaccinated. She starts offering this concept of freedom. She starts changing the language
Plural.
from
they call them freedoms.
Freedoms. And it's dumb shit, you can go for a fucking, picnic. Fuck off. None of this discusses the fact that 1 in 3 will experience long COVID. A chronic illness.
And the health consequences of that.
But
that's
also,
okay, because there
not
are...
all the people who have everything else that is wrong with people that now won't get help. It's just a fucking terrible, stabbable situation that could have been avoided.
Being over 70 is a pre-existing condition now. Being poor is a pre-existing condition.
September 10th, Gladys decides she can't be fucked giving updates anymore because it's so tragic and she's such a piece of shit.
They gave Daniel Andrews a hard time when Bain himself broke him across his knee and threw him down a flight of stairs, and people were like, well, the least you could do is show up.
In summary, New South Wales is still in lockdown. It had this many cases today. Victoria had this many. New South Wales, this many also. Tasmania, Queensland, And the other ones?
All the rest.
This many of us are vaccinated, right? I think that this really just reiterates that, yes, Delta variant is a fucked enemy. And like, yes, we had to open up at some point. But you know what? We literally had a choice where we could have, like, I don't know, made a deal earlier and vaccinated our population so that we wouldn't have to go through this. And what's projected, which I will put here in the links below, is heinous. Like, do you just not know any people who work in healthcare? Do you just not know people who are being brought over from, like, I don't know, like being a shoe salesman into healthcare so that they can, like, I don't know, take care of you when you're suffocating to death? Like, what is wrong with you? It's gonna be horrible!
They've shat the bed at every opportunity there was. Every crux moment when they could have unfucked it, they've fucked it instead. And
I think
here we
that
are now.
timeline...
There are various moments on those sheets where it could have been
timeline upset
less shitty.
Oh, the timeline.
I'm so disappointed. So here we are now, and they're going to put it on you instead, and they're going to make us fight and resent each other, and they're going to be like, picnics for the vaccinated, no picnics for the unvaccinated. We can't police it either way. So just sort it out amongst yourselves. The rich will be taken care of because the health system is designed to protect them, and the rest of us are fucked.
That timeline was a whole thing. I think in retrospect, I guess, that by going through it, you can kind of see that, you know, you personally don't have a lot of agency. It's kind of not up to you. The government has kind of fucked you multiple times and they don't give a fuck. So let's all stick together. Let's try and get vaccinated. If you can't, like, I get it, you got like a medical thing, sure. But most of us can get vaccinated and let's try not to die.
Because we certainly can't trust the systems that are in place that are supposedly meant to protect us. That's sort of been fucked up every step of the way.
You know what you got to look forward to? Vaccine passports. Oh, I hope they're like as good as COVID.
There's one thing we can trust the government to do. It's to develop an app. The most technophobic, Luddite government we've ever had.
Excited, bitch. I am so ready for this to be hacked in 45 seconds. So if you are ready for that to be hacked in 45 seconds, leave a comment below, subscribe, like the channel, tell a friend, because Australia needs some people who are like essentially news or something to...
Is that us?
Yes.
We're the news.
We're the news.
Trust the news. More than that Wally cunt anyway.
Yeah.